Mhm. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining the maiden edition of IP Interactions. My name is Toju Dottier. I'm a partner in the intellectual property practice of the firm, Alukano Yebode, and I'm your host for this edition. For people who don't know what or who Alukano Yebode is, I don't know where you've been, but Alukano Yebode is a full-service law firm that caters to local and international clients, and IP Interaction is an initiative of the firm showing at aiming to show how IP interacts with every industry to drive value in that industry. Today, we are looking at how IP interacts with the modern film industry, particularly from the lens of distribution. Our guest today, Ms. Noe Segun Ojo, is the General Manager of Nile Entertainment, an expert on the topic, and she'll be sharing about her journey into the film industry and how IP is constantly interacting within that industry. We hope to leave our audience with knowledge that is practical and relevant after this session. I will proceed to just read our guest's bio because I think she's phenomenal. Our guest is Noe Isibo Shegunjo. She is a film distribution executive shaping the future of cinema across West Africa. As general manager at Nile Entertainment, she leads operations, theatrical strategy, and integrated marketing across the full release life cycle, spanning campaign development, trade marketing, audience engagement, and box office performance for both Nollywood and international studios title. She bridged the gap of global studios and local exhibitors with precision. With a multidisciplinary background spanning entertainment, oil and gas, construction, beauty retail, public sector engagement, and technology, Noe has built a career at the intersection of storytelling, commerce, large-scale operations. She has led communications, branding, and business development initiatives across industries, giving her a rare ability to translate strategy into measurable impact. Her work has contributed to Million Naira marketing and distribution campaign across theatrical releases, over 1 billion in box office revenue across Nollywood and international titles, audience reach in the hundreds of millions across digital, experiential, and in-cinema activations, high impact stakeholders engagement across government, corporate, and creative sectors. I mean, if I go on, I think I would use the 1 hour we have just to talk about how phenomenal our guest, Ms. Noe Isibo Shegunojo is. And Ms. Noe, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to be our guest today.
Thank you, Toju. I was looking back for a moment like Samuel.
It is
Thank
you, all right. It is you, all right. I mean, I'm looking at your bio and I'm wondering, with every career, there's always an origin story. And the
you.
path is often not a straight line, but a windy road shaped by curiosity and circumstance. And I'm wondering, from beauty retail, I mean, how did you end up in the business of film distribution? And what were the key turning points along your journey?
Mm, It wasn't a straight line, like you said.
Mhm.
Um, it was a series of intentional and unintentional, steps, and ultimately a deep love for storytelling, like you have mentioned, from construction, beauty retail, oil and gas space. I think the one thing that has been consistent for me is marketing, um,
Yes.
communications, marketing. And with marketing, I've spent years understanding the consumers, building the brands, learning how to connect products with the right audiences. So that foundation honestly taught me something invaluable. No matter how great a product is, it
Yeah.
means nothing if people don't know about it, you know.
True.
And so when the opportunity came to transition or pivot into film distribution, I realized that the same principles apply, really. Film is not just art, it's a product that needs to find its audience. And so I began by just learning the mechanics of the industry because I'm pretty new when you think about it, how films move from, I'm new, how films move, from production to cinemas, release strategies, release windows. I was pretty curious. Ultimately, it became a passion for me. I found myself fascinated by the business of film, the strategy behind release slates, the negotiation of licensing deals, the thrill of watching a film connect with audiences on opening weekend. Opening weekend is important for us. And, today I lead distribution at Nile Entertainment, and I get to combine my marketing background with my love for film. Every single day, I'm learning something new because in this industry, no two films are the same, honestly. And no two releases follow the exact same playbook. So honestly, I'm excited, but so far so good. We've been doing well.
Okay. I'm fascinated about how, your careers have evolved. And one of the things you touched on was a willingness to seize unexpected opportunities. And I often get asked this question, what steps can someone take to transition into a new role or in industry, leveraging on existing skills? And I try to answer that question, being the big sister sometimes in the room, but I feel like a fraud because I've been in one industry. So, and you are the poster card for someone that has, transitioned. What is the one skill that you think from looking at your career, what is the one skill that has been effective in your role as general manager, distribution in industry? The one skill.
I'll say a few skills, but one
Yeah.
of them is relationship capital, you know, emotional intelligence,
Wow.
managing stakeholders across different projects. I think that I have to give myself props when I see I'm a good relationship manager. I have to manage my producers. I have to manage my team. I have to manage my directors. I have to manage my exhibitors. I have to manage everybody. I didn't realize, in fact, when I was poached, because I was poached for this role. So when I asked, because remember that I'm coming from a marketing background, even though marketing is not an industry, marketing is a skill that can translate. So when I act, like, because honestly, I have been in film distribution space in the marketing sphere, but not necessarily film distribution operations where I now head Nile Entertainment. So I was a bit like, okay, why me? And what they had said was relationship management. So in
Wow.
the where I was prior, they had noticed that I was really good at managing. I didn't even realize that was a skill. I just thought that, that's just how I am naturally. But apparently that was a massive skill. Marketing also gave me one of the most valuable skill a distributor can have, right?
Wow.
Understanding audiences. Before you can successfully distribute a film, you need to understand who you're talking to, what motivates them, how to create excitement around the release, right? Release film. So my years in marketing taught me to build anticipation, right? Translate creative ideas into commercial success, like you mentioned prior. So that experience has become one of my biggest strengths as a distributor.
Wow.
Today, when I'm evaluating or creating a release strategy, I'm not just looking at the logistics, ensuring the film reaches all the cinemas. I'm asking valuable questions. I'm asking who is the audience? I'm asking why should they care? I'm asking what makes this film different? I'm asking what partnerships can we build? How do we maximize opening weekends? So marketing has taught me things beyond just releasing a film, right? Every release should have a clear strategy behind it. Distribution is not just about making a film available in cinemas. It's about making sure people actually watch the film, and that's one important and critical factor, critical skill across all these industries that I have worked in, that is still singularly the most important skill that I have. In fact, I would argue that distribution is marketing, right? The different type of, it is marketing, you know. I had a lot of naysayers as well. People said I wasn't going to be able to do this. She doesn't know anything about film distribution. It's marketing. Let her stay where she is. What does she know? And the one thing that I'm so proud of is the fact that because I haven't been in this space for many years, what that means is I have a unique perspective of how I think things should be done, right? So I'm a risk taker. I'm trying to do things differently. I'm a disruptor. I've disrupted, my team and I have disrupted a lot of things. We are inspiring other distributors to do things differently. Nile Entertainment came into the space and everybody had to up their game. And I say that without mincing words, and that was because this newbie decided that things can be done differently. Do I get it right all the time? Trust me, I do not. I don't. I fail a lot of times. But when I get it right, it's like magic, and when I get it right, you see the ripple effect of getting it right and how other competitors or competition or distributors are just elevating, their own agendas and their own strategies. And all of that is because of that marketing background. So film distribution simplified it by just thinking that it's a product. I just have to market it.
Yeah. So. And I love the fact that you talked about, seeing the movie as a product, because you've been in different industries selling products. So that similarity has allowed you to come into a new industry and have that drive. And I really love that you said that. And another question playing in my head now is, once you've had the foot into the door as being general manager now in the distribution space, what is something that has shocked you since joining the film distribution industry, apart from the naysayers, that I think that comes with the territory? What is the one thing that you look and be like, wow, is this really happening?
I think I thought it was simply about getting a film into cinemas. I had no idea about the layers, the strategy, the layers, the sheer coordination required to make it really successful. Another thing that genuinely shocked me was learning about distribution windows. I remember thinking, why can't I release this film on every platform at the same time, simultaneously? But I quickly learned that there's a method to the madness. There is a theatrical window, which is the bedrock of the entire ecosystem. The buzz, the excitement, the red carpet, the word of mouth, all of that starts in cinemas. And then from there, you move to streaming platforms or pay-per-view, then airline deals, free-to-air television, and eventually, years later, like Funke Akindele, you can even release on YouTube, because now Omogeto is on YouTube. So each window has its own value, it has its own audience, it has its own revenue potential. Some producers can skip certain windows, and that's fine, especially if a film is not suited for cinemas, because not all films are cinema films. But for many films, that theatrical window is where the magic happens. Some streaming platforms, Tori even requires that you release in cinemas before they acquire a film, because they know the value of that cinematic buzz. Another thing that shocked me is how much of this industry is learned on the job. No formal training, no university degree for film distribution. You learn on the job, you learn by doing, by failing, by adopting. You learn from exhibitors, from streaming platforms, from data, from your audience. Every film teaches you something new, and that's what makes this industry so exciting. It's constantly evolving. And you have to evolve with it.
Yes.
You just have to, honestly.
I'm looking on the outside and I just think it's all about glitz, glamour. I didn't think that, there was this behind the scene where there is a strategy for distribution. I would assume that, oh yeah, once a movie is out and we're sending to the public, we now have streaming medias. It's going on Netflix, it's going on Amazon Prime, it's going everywhere, including, in cinemas too as well. I understood that there's a strategy, but I didn't think that it was this technical and you had to stick to a script. And not one strategy fits all. It depends on the movie and several factors too as well. Let's move to the Nigerian film industry evolution and market realities. I mean, you've witnessed the industry grow. How would you describe the current state of the film distribution industry in Nigeria compared to 5 or 10 years ago?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I like to answer that question a lot. And the industry has truly evolved significantly, and I would say it's now it's more structured, more strategic, more data driven than 10 years ago. So
Mhm.
10 years ago, maybe it was centered around getting a film into cinemas, and film festivals, right? Today, the conversation is much broader. Distributors now think about theatrical releases, they think about streaming opportunities, they think about international markets, diaspora audiences, digital marketing, strategic partnerships, and intellectual property monetization, which is why we're here. Which is one
Yes,
of the
yes.
most important developments as well, has been the growing use of data. Platforms like Comscore have really transformed how we operate in distribution. It provides daily box office reporting,
Mhm.
admissions data, market share, and audience trends on Comscore. And this has enabled distributors like us to make smarter decisions around screen allocation, optimizing show times that we receive from our exhibitors, and just adjust marketing spend in real time. Um, we've also seen much greater synergy across the industry. Producers, distributors, exhibitors, marketers, and just talent are collaborating earlier, and more intentionally than before, honestly. Really, strategies are also increasingly built around shared objectives now.
Mhm.
Another exciting shift would be the growing acceptance of niche content, right? A decade ago, there was a perception that only broad commercial comedies, slapstick comedy, dramas could succeed. Today, audiences are supporting films across a much wider range of genres, provided they are well made, effectively marketed. Examples would be Alive to Dawn. We released that in January, a horror genre that crossed over 74 million in cinemas. Another one would be The Boy Who Gave. It's a dramedy. It's currently
Mhm.
over 81 million in box office. And all of these films succeeded by understanding their core audiences, executing targeted strategies.
Mhm.
Um, Audiences are also no longer loving just Lagos. We've seen growth in Abuja, Port Harcourt, Ibadan, Benin, even Asaba, and other emerging markets as well. Some genres generate more interest outside Lagos as well. We like to sort of prioritize regional preferences. Competition has also intensified. The
Mhm.
presence of major Hollywood studios, stronger distributors, and higher production value has really raised our expectations across the industries. But despite this progress, I have to say that there's a lot of challenges. Nigeria is still significantly underserved, right? And so in terms of cinema infrastructure, in compared to our population, it's still not enough. The amount of screens that we need to ensure that more audiences watch our films, unfortunately, we don't have that. So we still need the government to support us as much as possible. So the industry has truly been elevated a little bit, especially Comscore. I think that's my favorite part. When I talk to creators that have been doing this longer than I have, and they tell me how they were imputing the data, imputing the box office numbers every week. They had to manually calculate it. I'm just thankful that I've come to the era where we can just go on Comscore, and just pull it out. So I think that's the one thing that I think that there's going to be even more sophistication with reporting with data. I mean, we're in AI era now, so I can imagine that there's even going to be more improvement and I would say targeting and just more precise targeting because of how AI and data is just helping all of us do a much better job.
I mean, Noe, you've highlighted several things, and I'm just going to mention some of the things you've highlighted. The opportunities created by streaming platforms, expanded exhibition channels, but also the growing sophistication of Nigerian audiences and the increasing need, the global reach for Nigerian content. Now we have filmmakers in this era, navigate cinemas, streaming platforms, television, even international markets access simultaneously. And also, this has brought opportunities and complexities around my favorite topic, which is intellectual property, rights management, licensing, long-term revenue generation. And I believe that the distribution channel, now that we have, especially with technology, expands the content, that would be, around the place. And now there is a tension between distribution and ownership. And it leads me to understand if filmmakers, understand what it means to own intellectual property, especially in this modern era. So the questioning is, in your view and in your opinion, being in the industry, do you think that the filmmaker has grasped the meaning of what it truly means to own intellectual property?
So owning intellectual property means owning the long-term value of your creative work. And I want to be clear about what that really entails, especially in a room filled with lawyers. So it's not just about owning the story, it's the film itself. It means having a proper chain of title. Think about it like a certificate of ownership for a property, right? So that means having production agreements, co-production agreements, cast and crew agreements, licensing agreements, and all the legal documentation that establishes who owns what, right? Many people think about a film as a single cinema release, but a successful film can continue generating value long after it leaves theaters, after it leaves cinemas. Intellectual property includes the right to theatrical exhibition, streaming, television, airline, international licenses, merchandising, remakes, adaptations, music rights, amongst others. So the filmmakers who build sustainable businesses are often those who think beyond just the opening weekend, right? So these filmmakers understand that every successful film creates an asset that can continue generating income for years. We've seen that with Funke Akindele, Jennifer's Diary, right? She's been able to use that specific IP to create multiple revenues and outlets. As distributors, our role is not just to help a film perform well in cinemas. It's also to protect and enhance long-term value of that intellectual property. We have to help position the film effectively. We have to reach the right audiences. We have to open doors to future opportunities. I believe as the Nigerian film industries continues to grow, owning or ownership of intellectual property will become one of the most important drivers of growth, sustainability, and global competitiveness, really. And we're getting there.
Yeah, I think I want to shift the conversation to a young filmmaker starting in the game. I find that there's an ongoing tension, especially with producing a film that is between immediate need for production capital, long-term value of retaining IP rights. So in your experience, are young filmmakers truly building IP ownership, or are many unknowingly trading long-term rights for short-term financing distribution?
Sorry, yeah, ready to scatter this table.
I mean, because we have so many young, I know since announcing IP interactions, I've had so many young filmmakers reach out, and I'm like, they're really interested. But the thing is that we find that once they have investors' money, they don't even care anymore. They just want to, go. So in your view and in your opinion, do you
Yeah.
think that, the idea of building IP, long-term wealth, as you have said, is something that they embrace, or it's just about the finance and distribution access?
I think it's a combination of both. Um, so the Nigerian film industry has become more aware of the value of intellectual property over the past few years. So more filmmakers are beginning to understand that a film is not just a one-time product, right? But a long-term asset that can continue generating revenue across multiple platforms, right? Filmmakers like, again, Kira Kindele,
Kekere is a veteran.
and Tony Abraham,
Yeah,
Alakada,
yeah.
sophisticated about retaining ownership and strategic licensing specific rights. They've been able to also negotiate better deals, giving platforms exclusivity for shorter periods while retaining control over their IP, right? However, there are still many producers who, due to financial pressure, like you've mentioned, give out significant rights early in the process just in exchange for money. Some don't even read the agreements carefully. They just want the money, right? That may solve a short-term challenge, but long-term earning potential really is going to be completely shut down. You can give an example to Ryan Coogler, right? I think the studio wanted rights for 25 years. He
Oh,
refused that.
yeah,
He understood the value of owning his own IP, and he negotiated a deal that worked for him, right?
yeah.
And that's for sinners. So we encourage filmmakers to understand the commercial value of their licensing,
Mm,
negotiate deals that strike a balance between securing financing and preserving future opportunities. Distribution should be viewed as a partnership, right? We're both aligned on maximizing the value of your film, right? Rather than simply completing just a transaction. So we're partners in this, we're working alongside with you. We're not trying to rip you off. We want you to benefit from your IP in the long run, which is why we encourage filmmakers when they sign deals with us to extend it for as long as possible, because there are some deals that are more difficult to convince than others. So like
mm,
if you sign rather like a 5-year deal, because if you sign a 2-year deal, it's more difficult to convince streamers, especially right now that they've exited the region, to accept your
mm,
title. So give us some more
yeah.
time to stretch the value of that IP.
Yeah, I love how you've said that, because I feel like in recent times, especially with ChatGPT, you ask someone to come with an agreement and they just go and bring something from ChatGPT, and you realize that, did you read this? you've just signed off 75% of your hard work to someone that's just trying to help you for the beginning stage, the pre-production stage. So I love how you've talked about understanding the value and understanding the contractual process within that. And distribution agreements are among the most consequential contracts a production company or a filmmaker will ever sign. And at this point, I would like to say congratulations to Nile Entertainment for being the only theatrical partner for Universal Studio and Paramount Pictures in West Africa. I believe that you guys dotted your I's and signed your T's. In my experience and being a legal practitioner, I've been privileged to be involved in several transactions, negotiating deals, and I have seen a single unclear provision expose parties to this agreement to lost revenues or years of legal disputes. From your
Right.
experience, what legal or commercial red flags can immediately complicate a distribution deal?
So I'll start with the legal red flags because this room will appreciate it.
Yes.
So one of the biggest ones would be an unclear chain of title. We need confidence that the producer actually owns or has secured all the rights necessary to commercially exploit the film, right? So if ownership of the film or underlying rights cannot be established or properly established, then we would be highly reluctant to proceed. We don't want to expose ourselves to any copyright infringement claims or other legal issues. Others would be unresolved music licensing. Music rights can be very complicated. Especially if samples or popular tracks are used. Talent agreements as well that do not adequately explore rights are seriously another concern. Pending litigation, incomplete contracts, with investors or co-producers. From a commercial standpoint, there are also red flags as well. So some people want to take rights for certain territories, or a French-speaking region, for instance, for a ridiculous amount that doesn't reflect the market value, right? And that can complicate negotiations as well. Term of the license is also very critical. So our standard contracts, we often ask, like I mentioned prior, for like 5 years, but some producers insist on 2 years or 3 years, right? And like I mentioned prior, sometimes it takes a lot of time to convince streamers to take your title. So a shorter time can limit your ability to sort of maximize the film's value. Well, ultimately, distributors are we were looking for certainty, right?
Yeah.
Anything that doesn't give us certainty, we take our hands off. We don't want anything complicated, and all of things, everything I've mentioned prior can honestly kill a deal. I mean, for me and for us at Nile, we just completely rather not have our hands in there than to not know for certain that you own the rights to this film.
Yeah, there's an aspect of carrying out due diligence that both parties have to carry out too, especially for distributions company going to be giving their backing and their name to help you move your product, so to speak. They have to be assured that, you're not using something that you don't have a permission to use. And part of what we call it in law is clearing rights. We make sure that you've cleared everything that needs to be cleared, in a movie. Yes, we make sure that you've cleared everything that you need to use in that movie. If you're not supposed to, because I've had situations or we've seen situations abroad where a brand is shown on a movie and the brand is like, oh no, we don't belong to what it is that you're talking about. And because of that, that will stall the production releases and so many other things. So it's really important to carry out due diligence, and we're very happy to help in that regards too. From the outside, you just talked about the factors you consider before,
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'll
We just
give
talked
you
about,
another practical
please,
example
please, please.
on IP. So we had for one of our UIP titles, we had Minions, Minions and Monsters in cinemas. And one of the things that we do at Nile is to pursue partnerships, right? And so we had partnership, or pursuing partnership with Krispy Kreme and Panarottis and Chupa Chops, all these brands. And we couldn't go ahead with any partnership conversation if we didn't have the conversation with our studios, if they didn't give us the go ahead. And if there is a partnership with maybe Minions itself, the IP owners, and maybe a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere, we wouldn't be able to have like a Krispy Kreme, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Regardless of what the benefits are, it's just not going to work. They will just slap us with a suit.
Yeah, and it speaks to the agreements you have with these different brands. You can't have exclusive arrangement partnership with Dunkin' Donuts and you want to now put Krispy Kreme and they're like, I don't understand. We're supposed to be in a partnership. What's going on? So we totally get that too as well. And I think just to another question, you've talked about the things that you look out for. In my mind, I feel like distributors weigh a complex set of creative, financial, and market factors before committing resources to a title. Can you walk us through? And I'm sure there is a young filmmaker here listening and saying, how can I partner with Now? Can you walk us through how a distributor evaluates whether to acquire a film or the factors considered before acquiring the film and what elements carry the most weight in that decision?
Elements carry the most weight in that decision?
What would you be looking out for to support a movie, in terms of distribution?
There are several key factors before acquiring a film. Review stage. This is where we determine whether the content is good. Is it a good fit for our market? A film can be excellent and performing one market, but underperforming another market, just simply because there's low demand or it's just a poor market fit. The story, no amount of marketing can compensate for a bad film or a film that doesn't connect with or a film that is
yes.
So commercial viability as well. Is it going to generate us, some really good money?
Yes, that's also an important factor to consider.
Absolutely. Also, recognizable actors can significantly sort of influence opening weekend performances. It also comes down to genre as well and overall production quality. Technical execution, we think about that as well, and just the overall presentation of the film. Market fit, that is another critical factor. Billie Eilish documentary, for instance, likely made money in other territories, but performed well in the Nigerian market because there's simply no demand for Billie Eilish. Market demand also matters. When we're in conversations with Tubi, for instance, they understood the marketing and they also knew that they couldn't invest in Nollywood licenses because their current audience is just not Nollywood audience, because we reached out to them. So we have to be very realistic with where a film would work. Its release calendar is also very important. If you release a good film at the wrong time, it may struggle against, greater competition. We also assess the film itself, whether the film and ecosystem of the producer, the cast is available for publicity because we need them. Are there sufficient assets as well? Title ads, trailers, teasers, good short clips. What else? I think revenue potential and just overall viability. But ultimately, we always like to ask one simple question. Can we successfully position this film to reach its audience, generate a commercial return? I think it's important that people have to know that distributors, it's a business, right? The business of film. So if you're running a business, there has to be profit. So ultimately, there are lots of films that are really good films, but they just don't tick all the boxes mentioned prior.
Thank you very much. And if you're just joining us, this is IP Interactions. We're still speaking to Ms. Nowhere Shegojo, who is the General Manager of Nile Entertainment, and she's talking to us about the business of distribution within the modern film industry. So the next question I have for you, Nowhere, I mean, you talked about theatrical releases. Can you hear me?
I said we have over 51 people. That's actually wild. Hello, everybody.
And there's still enough people that are going to still watch the replay. So, I mean, that's a number coming in. We have my next question is, understanding that the traditional model of measuring a film's success primarily through a theatrical run and box office numbers is rapidly evolving, particularly especially in Nigerian markets, especially where we have digital consumption patterns, reshaping that landscape. My question is, beyond the theatrical release or box office receipts, what are the most significant revenue opportunities for emerging film producers today?
Today's producers have more opportunities than ever before to monetize beyond cinemas. We have streaming and digital licensing remains the most popular and the most lucrative, honestly. Particularly for films with strong audience appeal, international potential. Some producers choose to go directly to streaming because a single deal can return an entire production budget. It's really that lucrative. However, there's been a shift. The major streamers, they're not as aggressive as they once were. So the landscape has changed, a little bit. It's no longer guaranteed that streaming will be the golden tickets, which everybody wants, Of course, airline deals exist, but they are not the most lucrative. They are often more about reach than revenue. We have cruise ships as well. We have corporate screenings. Those are smaller screening opportunities, but worth exploring. Another significant opportunity would be intellectual property extension and remakes, right? So this would involve selling rights to other territories, places like India, Turkey, Brazil, or even other African countries to remake your film in their languages, and with their actors, right? So of course, content for something like that has to be superb, and the content ownership has to be tight. What else? Turning successful IPs into merchandise, right? Like Marvel. I don't know that we've tapped it as much yet here. I think All of My Life is doing that really well because their merch is really nice. So people want to buy your merchandise, but Nigerians don't like to. Nigerians are funny. I don't know how to explain it. They would like a Marvel, or they would like Sony, they would like Spider-Man or Superman, but they will not like
Harry
Alaka.
Potter, yes.
But you know what I mean? So,
Yes,
which is why All of My Life has something there. Ultimately, I think the diasporan audience honestly represents one of the biggest growth opportunities for us, or for Nigerian films. I think the demand for our films, Nigerian African films, is really high, right? So we need to think beyond domestic market and figure out strategies so that our IP can be well positioned for sustainable, success. At the end of the day, the most successful producers are the ones that think about films as beyond just a single release. They think about it as an asset, like a house, like a land that can generate value across multiple platforms, and territories for years to come. Even your children's children will keep benefiting from this asset that you've created from your mind. Yeah.
I love that you put it that way because if it were me putting it that way, they would feel I'm trying to sell business, as an IP lawyer. But I love that you are in the game and you're putting it that way. So I think my
Yeah.
next question again is we're still going to be on the streaming platforms because they become major players in the African movie space. This
Yeah.
offers, gives filmmakers access to a massive audience and upfront licensing fees that can be difficult to turn down. However, I find that with some streaming agreements, they contain provisions that go well beyond simple windowing. They might include broad rights. They might cover derivative works, as you talked about, merchandising, format adaptations that would include using the creator's name, image, and associated data for promotional purposes. So you know what we need to market, all of which a combination of which can significantly affect the filmmaker's long-term control over their work, affect them owning that real estate in the IP that they have. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, what then should a filmmaker pay close attention to before signing an exclusive streaming agreement? Would you even advise to sign an exclusive streaming agreement?
Yes, I would for sure. They should sign.
Mhm,
Um, I think they have to understand the rights that they are signing away, first of all, and what you're
mhm,
receiving in return.
mhm,
Um, Streaming platform will provide incredible visibility.
mhm,
Um, I think filmmakers should carefully review the scope of the agreement.
mhm,
Um, they should ask questions such as how long is the exclusivity? Which territories are covered? Are all rights being licensed or only specific ones? These are very critical questions. One of the biggest mistakes filmmakers make is solely focusing on the licensing fee without considering what rights are being surrendered.
yeah,
So they need to ask, does this agreement prevent future theatrical releases? Um, does it involve television licensing, international sales? Does it affect sequel development? So they have to be especially cautious about the duration, like the 25 years, Ryan Coogler one.
mhm,
That's a long time to give out control of your IP,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know. 25 years by the time you get it back after 25 years, it's done the rounds, right?
yeah.
Filmmakers should think carefully whether it makes sense for them, right? Um, so pay attention to exclusivity as well. It's really important. Is it exclusive or non-exclusive?
Mhm,
If it's exclusive, what exactly is exclusive, what
yeah.
platform, what
Mhm,
territory, what window. Another critical point would be TVOD, TVOD, subscription, video on demand versus transactional video on demand. So they're all very different models with different revenue implications, right?
mhm,
Um, I think the filmmakers should also understand performance obligations, right? Because there's going to be reporting requirements, payment timelines, termination rights, right? At the end of the day, you're not just negotiating for one film, right? You're making decisions that can affect the long-term value of your creative work. Um, Before signing any exclusive agreement, have a clear understanding of immediate financial benefits, long-term impacts on your intellectual property. And I think also, I think you should talk to Aluko and Oyebode
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
for legal advice.
Thank you
Very,
very much, Noe. I have somebody on the chat box asking a question. Oluwa Tofarati says, having worked with both international studio releases and local production in West Africa, what lessons can Nigerian filmmakers borrow from global studios when it comes to managing and commercializing IP? I believe Noe just answered that question with this question. The next question I have, Noah, is the African film business, I believe, is at an inflection point with growing international recognition, investment, and audiences that are more connected. You talked about the audiences that are diaspora. What trends do you think will define the next 5 years of the African film business? What excites you most about the future of Nollywood?
You can see that I'm shimmy because
Yes.
I'm excited about this. I think we're in the most exciting period of the history of like cinema. Um, and one of the biggest trends would be the continued growth of cross-border collaboration, right? We're already seeing more partnerships between African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal, and even connections with Trinidad and Tobago, you know,
Mhm.
I believe that will continue to accelerate, right? We'll also see more investment in intellectual property, okay, and franchise building. Instead of focusing on just standalone films, I think that producers will produce films that can evolve into like sequels, television series. For example, Blood Sisters could
Yeah.
become a feature film,
Yeah.
right? So producers need to start thinking outside the box. Technology will also play a significant role. We're already seeing people producing full feature films with
Yeah.
AI.
Yes.
And with even better AI models emerging, there's going to be more productions that are more realistic. Post-production editing is already being done with AI right now. We'll definitely have our own AI-powered production ecosystem. It's already happening. I think data-driven marketing, digital audience engagement, improved production will help filmmakers just understand or enrich their audiences. What else? Something else that excites me the most is that the world is paying close attention to African stories than ever before.
Yeah.
Nollywood is no longer just creating films for local audiences. We're now telling stories that resonate globally, right? Which is so important. And most importantly, we're remaining authentically African. The next chapter is not just about producing more films. It's about producing globally competitive intellectual property, right? That can travel cross borders while preserving our unique culture and identities. I think it's important that we remain extremely authentic, but then we have to compete globally.
Yeah. There is a type of IP that we usually talk about, cultural expressions. Do you understand? And so those are things that are becoming mainstream and they're showing in our movies, in our media. I mean, I remembered when Ojudo Eba was a thing. That's a cultural expression that is now entertainment. And so we don't want a situation where somebody extrapolates that culture, puts it in in a Hollywood movie and we say, oh, it's from a culture so owning our stories and our rights are some other ways to go. And I love that you put that so beautifully. I have an anonymous person asking a question. What is something you've learned on the film distribution journey that you believe every filmmaker must know? Pretty much saying, what is the thing you can tell someone about protecting their work? What do you think, every filmmaker must know?
I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. But one lesson stands. So making a great film is just one journey, right? Getting people to watch it is the other half. I've met incredibly talented filmmakers pour their hearts into making a film, but they didn't invest enough time in understanding their audience, planning their release strategies, or marketing the film, right? Distribution should not be treated as an afterthought, right? It should be part of the conversation from the moment a film enters development, right? Decisions about casting, about genre, about target audience, release timings, and just marketing are can influence a film's commercial success, as we're saying, right? So producers have to think beyond the film. They have to think think about the audiences. Ask yourself, who am I talking to, right? Is my film in limbo because I don't know the audience, right? I've also learned that the relationship between a filmmaker and a distributor works best when you trust me and I trust you. There's trust, there's transparency, collaboration, when the both of us share the same goal of maximizing the film's potential. I think the chances of success increases significantly. Finally, I like to tell filmmakers that every film is an investment, right? Every film is also an intellectual property, right? So think beyond opening weekend. Think about the life of your story after cinemas, through streaming, television, international markets, remakes, merchandise, and future adaptations, right? The films that create lasting impact are the ones that manage, businesses, and are the ones that go beyond just being a work of art and get into the impact space. So think beyond an art, because most filmmakers, they think, oh, I'm just an artist, I want to just focus on the art, and then they forget about the business of film, or they leave it to people that want to take advantage of your IP, which is why you have to trust. Put your film, if you don't have the time, put your film in the right hands, have your distributors that you trust, talk to your lawyers, even as fair as our terms are, our legal licensing agreements are, we have filmmakers that still go through everything line by line, and they say, no, I'm not comfortable with this, I'm not comfortable with that, can you change this, can you edit this out? And sometimes we even find that we have to now sit and explain to them why this is like this and that's like that. But it's important that you understand your agreements from end to end. If you don't understand the mumbo jumbo of the legal mumbo jumbo, then hire Aluko and Oyebo. Let them break it down for you. These days, a lot of people
Thank
use
you very much.
to break it down for me in plain man's English. You know what I mean? And the
Yes.
one thing with Nile Entertainment is that we always, the moment we decide to take on your title, we almost hold you by the hands. It's a process, it's a partnership, it's a marriage. We're not just letting you go by the wayside. You fail, we fail. I fail, you fail. So we're very big on communicate. In fact, we over communicate at this point, because we want you to understand what you're signing, and you're not just signing your life and your art away.
Yeah, there are two things you talked about that just stood out for me. What you talked about, the factors you talked about was factors that people should understand before going into a marriage, in a relationship. Pretty much trust, alignment, But one of the most important things that stood out for me is understanding value, knowing that your film is a product that has value. So think beyond opening weekend, think about long term. And I think I've thoroughly enjoyed having this conversation with you. I know where time is going, and I just have one question to just finally conclude. We've had such an amazing time, and this one is a must ask. How do you balance it all? You're a wife, you're a mother, you're a professional in a tasking industry. What are some of
Yeah.
the things that you do that helps you show up excellently like you do?
I was on a panel, I think it was like 3 days ago, and the same question was asked. And honestly, balance is a myth. And I've made peace with that. I think the biggest shift for me was accepting that I don't have to do it all perfectly, right? I used to carry this weight, this pressure to show up as an executive, as a mother, as a wife, as a friend, and somehow be perfect and excellent simultaneously. But that's not realistic. You're gonna break down. It's not healthy. What I've learned is that balance looks different every day, right? Some day work takes the lead. Some days my children need me more, right? And other days I just need to breathe, right? I've stopped apologizing for just wanting to breathe, right? The same panel I spoke on 3 days ago, the same question was asked, and I said, I feel like I've not seen my husband in 3 days. We're in the same house, but I haven't seen him, right? Because work has been quite hectic. But that was an acknowledgement that I was definitely dropping the wife ball, right? So guess what? Sometime next week, the work ball is going to be dropped, because I'm going to be wife mode all the way over. I'm going to overcompensate, dinner there, screening here, something. I've also entered the no guilt zone when it comes to accepting help. I can speak for myself. I'm in an extremely privileged position right now. So my mother-in-law has been with us since my first child was born, and he's 5. My husband is extremely hands-on. He controls his own time, right? So he could have decided that he can decide to do other things with his time, but he decides to use that time to step in fully and intentionally for the home, for the children, which then frees up time for me to follow my dreams outside of being a mom and a wife. And please, by all means, accepting help does not mean I'm outsourcing mommy role, okay? I am still very much present for my children, for my home as a homemaker, as a wife. But if I miss a bath time or two or a story time or two, and I choose to allow the nanny to handle that, or my mother-in-law because work demanded my attention, that does not make me less of a mother or make me a bad mother, right? And motherhood has actually made me sharper at work, I would say. It's taught me patience, prioritization, how to make the most of the time that I have. It's giving me deeper sense of purpose, okay? Because I'm not just building a career for myself. I'm building something that my children will be proud of. They come to my premieres all the time. They're happy, they see me. Oh, that's mommy. So to mothers out there, just release the pressure to be everything to everyone at the same time. Just show up as you are, and trust that that's enough. Some days it will be messy, some days it will be beautiful, and that's okay. Please be mindful of the person that you get married to. Who you marry is also important. I know that not everyone, sets out to marry a bad person, but honestly, I might not be in this position that I am if I don't have the supportive husband and home that I currently have. Maybe I'll be in a career and I'll just be not thriving in that space. I'm just be getting by. And I tell my mother-in-law and my husband all the time that they have single-handedly given me my career, because people don't even, sometimes they don't even know that I've had kids because there's no break. Because I from my first, I went back to work 2 months after. How am I able to do that? Think about it. Because I have my mother-in-law. She's, in fact, my first child, my mom and my mother-in-law were in the house. I went back to work 2 months after. My second, once I came back, I went back to work, not from giving birth. When I came back, I went back to work next month. So it doesn't seem like there's a break. So I'm aware that my position is privileged. I'm aware that it's not for everybody, but I'm speaking from my own experience. I am not able to be all of these things without the support of my husband, of my mother-in-law, of accepting, my super nanny's help, just knowing I can't do it. Yes, there was a time I used to want to be the person who wake up every morning and, make sure that I'm the one that bathes my 2 children. I was breaking down my entire system, HBP here and there. It was insane, right? It was even my husband that told me, Mom, relax, calm down, allow mommy, allow the nanny, like sleep. Even my mother-in-law, sometimes she would see me come from work and she'll just tell me, go and sleep. You know what I mean? Because she's seeing the toll on me. So my village is with me, right? she's made that I will never ever, and I talk about this everywhere I go, because she left her home and she's building mine with me. So I have that support in an era where you can't trust anybody. You might have gone through 10 nannies, but my mother-in-law has remained. And the fact that I'm here at work, I haven't opened my phone to look at the camera to check what's going on, even if I have that, because I know that she's there. So for me, one of the major reasons of me thriving in this career and everybody saying, no way, you're doing amazing, is because of the village I have at home, you know. So that's what I can say for that, for my own personal experience.
Thank you so much, Noe. I mean, I'm the moral of the story is wisely pick your village, pretty much. And on that note, I want to say thank you, Noe, for being our first guest and for just gracefully showing up and sharing your journey and your thoughts, which have been really enlightening for us. And to everyone who has tuned in, thank you so much. To the people who made this possible, my IT team, my associates, special shout out to Mrs. Araoye, the teams
Can you hear me?
involved. Yes, we can hear you.
But if there are questions in the Q&A that you didn't ask me, I think maybe
Yes, we
try
would definitely send it to you because of time, because people just don't want to leave, and we understand that you have to go. And I mean, it's testament to the fact that this was an engaging session, and thank you so much for giving us your time. Please, you can follow Mrs. Segun Ojo on LinkedIn and on Instagram, and she would gladly and happily answer your questions. Thank you so much, Ms. Noe, and we're past time. And I want to say thank you so much to our audience, to the intellectual property team at Aluka Anybody. Thank you so much. To the associates that have made this possible. Thank you so much. Special appreciation to our marketing team and the IT team at Aluka Anybody for always being on hand every time we have to do this. Thank you so much. Until the next edition, we're signing off now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Noel.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.